Controversially, I think the worst thing to come out of the war on drugs is society's half-baked response to it, whereby if something is not a step towards an imagined utopia, or alternatively corresponds to a step away from utopia, we say that it is not right or that it is not the right policy to enact. And don't get me wrong, you may be right for the horrible things that you think came out of the war on drugs. There's certainly a conversation to be had about when you decide to ruin your body if that really harms anyone else and should be illegal. But at the end of the day, no, if we can't prevent people from taking drugs, we should just make drugs legal is an insanely childish and destructive mentality. If we can't prevent murderers from committing murder, then should we just allow murder? And if we let a war on murderers and that just so happened to correlate to an increase in murderers, then again, your conclusion is that we should just stop criminalizing murder. Now, you can draw a line in the sand and ignore the logical implications of your beliefs, but the reason I say this mentality is so dangerous is because what I just gave you wasn't just a comparison. There are these judges who started out just being light on drug crimes, and now they're light on violent crimes. Because crime is just a social construct and it's caused by over-policing. No, it's not. The issue here is believing that law, order, and government are instruments that can be used to create utopia. They're not. Utopia doesn't exist. Law and order are just meant to preserve society and fend off anarchy. It is that which sustains society. I don't wake up in the morning and say, well, what's the point of eating if I have to continue eating for the rest of my life? If eating is good for me, shouldn't it make it so I never have to eat again? No, there will always be criminals, there will always be social deviants, and there will always be murderers. And another issue with this mindset is that we are seeing utopia as the consequence of our actions in order to deem those actions as moral. That's consequentialism. And it doesn't work when you consider it's absolute. If just anything that yields a good consequence is good and anything that yields a bad consequence is bad, then if I give a toy to charity and a child is playing with that toy as he crosses the street and gets hit by a car, I did a bad thing. Or if I was to steal that toy from that child, then that would save his life and that would be a good thing. But no, that's not the case. So at some point you have to recognize intent. You have to recognize what knowledge you have in committing an action. You have to recognize some form of obligation. Especially when we consider the sort of self-defeating meta-argument that we've already alluded to of if consequentialism is true, then what is the consequence of viewing things as consequences? Well, it's this world that we're getting a taste of right now. A world where violent criminals are not seen as individuals who have an obligation not to commit the acts they do, but as a consequence of something else. And more we're losing sight of concepts like individualism and moral obligation, which leads to this final confrontation with this mentality, where we see everything as a consequence, but we refuse to acknowledge that people resorting to violence because they don't get their way is a consequence of us not holding them accountable.